Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 8. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation. Not just Friday, it is game day, Dave, as the Pittsburgh Steelers will kick off their preseason opener tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time against the Houston Texans at Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh. So, for all the Brandon Aiyuk news and rumors and saga, there is a game to be played tonight, and I would like to dedicate at least part of this show to this contest and some real football.
Yeah, how great it is. And I think hopefully at least I'm sure they will talk during the broadcast about the possibility of Brandon Aiyuk, but obviously there's been no finality on that. We'll probably get bits and pieces more of that thrown out throughout the day here, but it doesn't seem like anything's imminent there. I just want to just sit back and watch a game now.
Right.
You know, you've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to go out there and see every training camp practice and doing a great job of relaying information. And I've been able to piece together a lot based on your information, but nothing comes close to actually watching the game tape. And I'm really looking forward to seeing certain aspects of this game and getting the all 22. And man, the offensive and defensive line, something that you're not able to get a close look at, at training camp there. That's one aspect of it as well. But yeah, just glad to have football back. I don't know how anybody. I get it. It's just a preseason game, but I don't know how any fan can't be excited about the game tonight. Which, by the way, should be streamed live on the NFL Network.
Right. So for those out of market wanting to watch the game, NFL Network will be your ticket to watch this one. Of course, will be shown locally on KDKA in the Pittsburgh area. We'll talk Aiyuk here in a bit. Let's save that for later. There is no major or new development as of this recording. I feel like every time we talk about Aiyuk, I have to mention the time so people know that it's 10:27 a.m. and there is no giant news right now on Aiyuk. Things can change quickly. But let's talk about Mike Tomlin. He had his press conference previewing this game and kind of giving a state of the training camp earlier this week. Didn't really cover that in the training camp episodes, trying to keep those tighter and just focusing on the day's work. So Tomlin confirming that 7 players will not play in this game. At least 7 will not play. Cam Hayward, Isaac Seumalo, TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Russell Wilson, Alex Highsmith, and Patrick Queen. Can also safely assume injured players like Roman Wilson will not play either. But those 7 that I rattled off are mostly for rest. Obviously, Russell Wilson with a calf injury, could he play in regular season action? He probably could, but not going to push things. Justin Fields will start and play a couple of series. So what were some of your big takeaways from the Tomlin press conference and his commentary on Justin Fields in particular?
Let's see. One thing that stuck out was Justin Fields, and has he been improving his footwork? Tomlin said, yeah, he just had to focus on his footwork in the pocket, body balance, posture in which he throws from it. It's been a point of emphasis for him going into the offseason, and I've just seen the fruit of that labor or the attention that he's given it. So I think, it probably gets lost in the shuffle this week from all that other stuff, well, especially with the Aiyuk stuff and all. But the fact that Mike Tomlin says that it's been a point of emphasis for him going into this offseason, and he's seen the fruit of the labor. I think that's one aspect. Look, we're going to judge, Justin Fields on his drives and what he accomplishes and all. But I think if you want to micro look at some things on the tape, that would be one thing that will be that we should look at, that everybody should look at, kind of his footwork in the pocket and all. So that's one thing that stuck out to me, Alex.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think in terms of watching Fields tonight, I know he's going to scramble and make some plays with his legs. I know he'll show off his arm if given the chance and maybe hit a deep shot downfield. But I already knew he could do those things. They're important to confirm and to see in a Steelers uniform, and they're just plain fun to watch in preseason action that sometimes can be a little dry overall. But I think what's really important for Fields is his mechanics. Is he strong with his base, which is what Tom Arth really harps on. It all starts ground up for the quarterback position. Does he get the ball out on time in rhythm? Is he accurate to all levels of the field? Does he make the routine plays routinely? Just is he consistent, which he was showing after, I think, an inconsistent and bumpy start to camp the last week and a half. He has really improved his accuracy, his decision making, and just showing that consistency that's been elusive throughout his career. So as flashy as the big things are, I want to see him do the small things, the detail things, because for him, they're the big things.
Absolutely. And, it sounds like a couple of series. I'd like to see at least, 10, 12, 14, 16 plays out of them, hopefully. But, the game flow will obviously dictate that. And, I think that's going to be a focus of mine tonight. And it goes without saying, everybody wants to see the rookies, right? The draft class and not only the draft class, but the undrafted kids as well, too. Now, obviously, Roman Wilson won't play in this one, so that's unfortunate there. Hopefully, maybe he can get back by the second preseason game. But just the rookies in general, obviously, Troy Fautanu, I think we expect him to play a lot of right tackle, all right tackle whenever he's in there in this game. Let's see. Obviously, Zach Frazier should get in there for a good number of snaps. Peyton Wilson, oh boy, can't wait to watch him tonight. Mason McCormick will Mason McCormick get reps at both guard spots or just one guard spot? Maybe you can help answer that ahead of time. Ryan Watts obviously should be on the field tonight as well. So yeah, goes without saying. And then, Beanie Bishop should be the starting slot, you would think. That's exciting in and of itself. Jack Coletto, looking forward to some Jack Coletto tonight at fullback in this game. So just the rookies in general, especially the more notable ones of the draft class and the undrafted kind there, I think that's going to be a prime focus tonight.
Always a highlight to see these guys inside a stadium for the first time. And even Logan Lee, he could play a lot of snaps with his versatility and some of the defensive line injuries. And, Cam Hayward not playing, Fehoko, I assume is not going to play in this one. We could get some nose tackle work for Lee, which is not his ideal spot, but, just snaps where you can get him. And he'll play up and down the line and probably end up playing all kinds of positions. I think our charting will be pretty colorful in terms of where Logan Lee aligns and what he could also potentially offer on special teams. So, yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. I assume the first team offensive line tonight will be working left to right. Dan Moore Jr., Spencer Anderson, Nate Herbig, James Daniels, and Broderick Jones. And then when the second team comes in, there'd be some discussion about how they're going to configure that. But you assume that there'll be three rookies out there in some form or fashion. And Troy Fautanu, who will definitely be playing right tackle, Zach Frazier at center, and then Mason McCormick, who could play both guard spots, should at least play left guard. So you might get three rookies out there at once. I really want to see how the group kind of works collectively with that inexperience out there, but the talent they have as well. And so I really just kind of want to see how they work combo blocks, especially Frazier, McCormick, since they're next to each other, how they pass off twists and stunts and communicate, and are they clean procedurally pre-snap wise. Those are going to be really important inside a stadium for the first time.
Yeah, and you had mentioned, especially early on in camp, all those laps those guys were doing, right? Right. Look, I mean, from a game plan aspect, I mean, we know not to read too much into it, even though the whole Kenny Pickett thing last year, both teams aren't going to show a lot from a schematic standpoint, but can they execute what's called at a high level? Can they not have those silly penalties that cost the team reps, like false starts and things of that nature there? So I guess another aspect is will Broderick Jones play any left tackle in this game? And he was asked, I think, after practice yesterday, and I I don't know if he really knows for sure at this point, although Mike Tomlin did say back to his press conference a few days ago that he will play both left and right tackle. I don't know if he specifically said in this game that he will. So that obviously will be something to track right there. You bring up an interesting name in Spencer Anderson, right? Guy that with Isaac Seumalo sideline tonight, I guess will likely start at left guard. This is a big second trip around the block for him, and it sounds like he's going to be able to focus a lot more on guard this time around, and more specifically left guard. And he's a guy that it could go either way with him on the 53-man roster right now. So that obviously is a guy on the offensive line looking forward to watch. Our buddy Dylan Cook, right? Should filter in there at left tackle. And I think one of the highlights last year during the preseason was Dylan Cook moving around on that offensive line. So if we expect him to at the very least get some left tackle spots, will we see him any at right tackle? Would you venture to say that we might not see any Dylan Cook at guard, at least in this first preseason game?
Yeah, I'd be shocked if he played guard. Frankly, Pittsburgh has just not done as much moving and shaking with their offensive line this training camp compared to last training camp, in part due to health. I mean, again, knock on wood. Has there been a healthier Steelers or NFL offensive line the last 2 years than the Pittsburgh Steelers? I mean, they've not had a single O-line injury this training camp. Again, I'm probably jinxing things and people will yell at me for it, but I mean, they've been healthy from that perspective. So that's one element. But even just that aside, even last year, they were pretty healthy and only had 14 offensive linemen throughout training camp instead of the usual 15. And they rotated guys around, Anderson playing a bunch of spots, Cook playing different spots. I think the one benefit of having a really strong and deep offensive line room is that you don't have to move these guys around as much. Versatility maybe matters a little bit less, just kind of focusing on your primary position. So, Cook will not play guard. He'll play tackle. Will it be both tackle spots? Maybe, but definitely no guard tonight.
All right. Will we see any pistol tonight? How much 2 and 3 tight end sets will we see? Obviously, Darnell Washington will be second-year guy that's in focus tonight. I really want to see Michael Pruitt in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform and however many snaps he gets. You had a piece on SteelersDepot.com about Jonathan Ward, the running back, and how he seems to be kind of separating in that next tier there. So I would imagine I don't know how much Najee or Jaylen Warren will play, if any, in this game. But if they do play, I would imagine it would probably be limited. And it sounds like Jonathan Ward might be the next man up when it comes to the running back position. So interested to see some of the more recent hype that you've had on him.
Yeah, I think he'll be the next man in, and it's still a pretty tight battle overall. But I think Ward, the last few days in camp, has begun to create separation between the likes of Michael P. Ryan, Aaron Shamklin, and I would say Deshaun Edwards is back of the pack right now in that running back room. So can Ward continue to show some burst and speed? Can he be a good teamer? He should get a bunch of looks as a wing on the punt coverage team, probably do some kickoff stuff, and maybe even gunner work. He's gotten a look or two there during that Friday Night Lights practice and had some decent reps overall. So there's a lot of value and versatility with Jonathan Ward. I want to go back to Broderick Jones here. As Tomlin already indicated, and I believe him, he'll play both tackle spots tonight. Left and right tackle should start the game at right tackle. I wonder how that initial second team O-line will look. I imagine it's going to be Jones at left tackle, McCormick left guard, Frazier at center, probably play Anderson at right guard, to be honest with you, and then follow Tanu at right tackle, and then Jones will probably get maybe 2 or 3 series. Then Dylan Cook will come in at left tackle to get some work there. That's one thing I want to watch. We'll just see what that second team O-line looks like. Yeah, there's been one guy that has benefited from Seumalo getting so much rest. It's Anderson. He's really been able to log extra reps on practice days and double up, and should do that in the game tonight. But with Jones, I just had to laugh and kind of amuse myself. Wasn't Jones giving an interview yesterday? And I think mid-conversation, Mike Tomlin jokingly said, "Broderick, get out the way," like he was in the way or something. I want to tell Mike Tomlin, the Steelers, get out the way of Broderick Jones and this flip-flopping of left tackle and right tackle. And he has gotten more left tackle work the last few practices ahead of this game, but he has been primarily a right tackle throughout the preseason. And it's just still a source of frustration to me. This team cannot really commit to Broderick Jones playing left tackle.
Yeah, well put. All right, after those first two line combinations or 2A and 2B potentially, because I think you make a great point. I think we could potentially see Broderick filter in at left tackle with some of that other second team offensive line there. But how are you expecting things to go second half per se with the offensive line?
Once Jones exits, or like late in the game?
Yeah, kind of later in the game. What would you say would probably be a third team and maybe even potentially a fourth set of line look like?
Yeah, well, the third team line, besides like the 2A, 2B of the Jones and Cook and those guys kind of filtering. I mean, the third team should be pretty clear cut of Devery Hamilton at left guard, Devery Hamilton at left tackle, Tyler Beach at left guard, Ryan McCollum at center, Joey Fisher at right guard, Anderson Hardy at right tackle. I imagine those guys are not going to get a ton of reps tonight because you got so many guys in that second team that need a lot of work and reps. Fautanu, McCormick, Frazier, those are guys you really want to look at. Anderson, Cook. So you probably get maybe some fourth quarter work for that third team, but they probably play maybe 15 snaps in this one is my guess.
All right. We know a lot about McCollum already. Who is of those late guys of those five, the one to pay the most attention to potentially?
There's really no one that stuck out to me in a really super positive way. No Dylan Cook last year, where you saw this really intriguing guy on that third team unit that you wanted to see more work of. Hardy's had a tough camp. Hamilton's been just okay. McCollum, as you said, been there, done that, been on Pittsburgh's practice squad for a couple seasons now. If you made me choose, I would say Joey Fisher at right guard for some of the strength and power run blocking that he has. But I'm not seeing anybody that's really ascending right now, but that's what the game is for. And the game can change that. And there are certainly practice squad spots there for the taking. I just don't see a 53-man roster possibility opening up for any of these guys the way that Dylan Cook really played his way onto the roster around this time last year.
All right. What are you looking for out of the wide receiver group tonight?
Van Jefferson, I just want to see that carry over. He's had a really solid and steady camp. I want to see him. I know he can block. I know he can catch. Can he separate? Can he show some burst? Can he create some big plays? And that's what I want to see out of Jefferson. It's been a good camp for him overall. Calvin Austin, can you win over the middle of the field? Can you make some tough combat catches? He's had a couple of good practices, but it has been a pretty quiet camp overall for Calvin Austin. So he's a guy that needs to have a loud preseason game. He had a big play, I think, inside stadiums last year, big touchdown. So need to make more plays like that, but I want to see him be able to win at all levels as opposed to just kind of the short, quick game stuff and the vertical stuff as well. And then Scotty Miller has quietly had a really strong and consistent camp against some of those backup Texans corners I assume he'll be facing. Watch out for Miller getting behind somebody or bursting away from somebody. That's a guy that could have a big play tonight.
How about Quez Watkins against some of these backup DBs?
His experience will help, and there's some versatility. He's played inside and outside, and I know he can run fast, and he burned Pittsburgh a couple years back in a preseason game for a long, 80, 90-yard touchdown. So there are wheels there, but it has been a relatively quiet camp for Watkins, a drop or two, just not super involved. And to me, he's very much outside the bubble right now for a wide receiver spot.
All right. Anything else on offense? We kind of covered the gamut there.
Yeah, just to mention, you mentioned tight ends. I want to see Darnell Washington as a run blocker. I know people are talking about him as a receiver, and that's always exciting and enticing for just the unique body type. But I want to see him as a base blocker, as a snap timing better than last year. Is he quicker off the football? I know he can down block because of his size and length and strength, but can he be able to kind of head up block? Can he work combo blocks on the front side of zones? Can he cut off backside of zone runs? I want to see those things out of Washington. And then just conceptually, schematically, does George Pickens, does he get aligned in the slot? He should. Will they run stacks and bunches? Will they stand up Pat Freiermuth they have throughout training camp? So I just want to see how Arthur Smith uses guys like Pickens and Freiermuth, top targets in this offense, how they're moved around and flexed out and just kind of changing their alignment to help free them up. I think that's been something I've seen from Arthur Smith in training camp. Should be refreshing once the season begins. But I want to note that to kind of see, not that they're game planning super hard, but just kind of running some of their base stuff of how they move around guys like Pickens and Freiermuth.
All right.
All right, defensively, Dave, what are you looking for? Let's start D-line here. Anything? I know Cam Hayward's not going to play. Ogunjobi probably doesn't get a ton of playing time, but still a lot of names to watch here.
Want to see Montravius Adams Chickalo. He according to you, he's had a very nice camp, and man, they're gonna probably rely on some of these backups for some snaps throughout the season, especially when Benton's not on the field. I mean, obviously Keanu Benton will be on our focus, but he's not going anywhere. He had a good rookie season. We expect him to. Yeah, I think Benton will have probably a couple, 3, maybe amazing reps that we'll see with that club swim. Like to see him get, I don't know, a sack, a TFL, something like that. But what about these backups? Guys like Montravius Adams. Obviously, Logan Lee should filter into this thing. Loudermilk should get a healthy amount of snaps tonight. Going to be paying close attention to that in segments of the All-22 breakdown. The most probably intriguing, I don't know, name on the defensive front, maybe to watch Friday night might be one DeMarvin Leal with these short outside linebacker lines that this team's going into this game with obviously Watt and Highsmith going to sit this one out. Herbig, goes without saying we'll be watching Nick Herbig, but I wouldn't imagine he's going to. He might have to play a lot of snaps tonight because of the line. So obviously him, but there was a report obviously in the PPG Pittsburgh Post Gazette that we might see Marvin Leal at some outside linebacker. And man, I really want to see DeMarvin Leal on a defensive line, to be honest with you. I don't know. Hopefully we'll see some of that, but because of the lines being thin at outside linebacker, it's sounding like we'll see Leal play some outside linebacker. And I think Batco from the PPG says he's like at 274 pounds right now.
Yeah, at first I thought when they kicked Leal out, because it didn't happen at the start of training camp, but a week or so in when there were some injuries there to Kyron Johnson and Jeremiah Moon and others, I thought, okay, this is just them getting through practice. But now, based off of Leal's continued use there, and as you mentioned that article from the Post Gazette, this sounds more feature than bug in terms of Leal playing true outside linebacker, dropping his weight and being 275. So is he going to be used as really as a pass rusher? Because you're not playing base end at 275 pounds in your 3-4. So is he going to be used as a nickel rusher in third down looks, and is he going to be used as a rotational outside linebacker? I mean, if he's an outside backer, once the season starts, I don't know where those snaps are coming from, because you're behind Watt and Highsmith and Herbig at minimum, and then potentially even Moon or Golden or whoever else is in the mix. So, I mean, maybe they're just kind of punting on the idea of him being a true down lineman and just want to utilize his unique athleticism and hope he develops as a pass rusher.
That's not a good update overall, though, right?
I don't know how to interpret it. To me, I don't love it, because I think one issue that Pittsburgh has had is all this bouncing back and forth. You're a D tackle, you're a D end, you're an outside linebacker. I think it's probably stunting development. Pittsburgh has this nasty habit of moving these guys around sometimes too much with their early draft pick. Sean Davis, one example of that. But if it creates more value and more versatility, and him on the edge is a 275-pound outside linebacker. You don't see those guys too often of that body type for Pittsburgh. That is intriguing, but yeah, it feels like Leal is going to become just super rotational guy as opposed to really ever a starter or having a main role anywhere.
That might be hard for him to get a helmet.
It might, but we'll see. He's had a good camp. I want to see it carry over, and regardless of where he's playing, I want to see him be able to succeed as a pass rusher and be able to shed blocks and find a go-to move. I know the Texans have some O-line injuries. They're playing starters tonight, but they're not playing their starting tackles and Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard, which is kind of scary whenever you have CJ Stroud playing in this game. It's going to be the rookie Blake Fisher at left tackle and Nick Broker, who's been a guard tackle, former 7th-round pick at right tackle. So I want to see Herbig have success. He should have success. I mean, I wonder, who do you think will be the outside linebacker opposite Herbig to start this game? We know Nick Herbig will be one of them. I don't know who's going to run opposite of him to begin this one.
Yeah, that's a good question. Kyron Johnson is a guy that was on this roster late last season or second half of last season, mainly for special teams. But I do wonder if it will maybe be him or Moon. So I cannot answer that question. It's a question that I have along with you to see who they view next in line, like you said, to play opposite Herbig. So that will be indeed something to watch. Who gets the first reps there?
And I don't think Marcus Golden will play, but I can't say that for sure. He didn't practice the last 2 days. I didn't even see him out there yesterday, but sometimes these veterans will pop back up and get these surprise snaps. So maybe it matters a little less who, and obviously the performance matters more. My guess is Moon, but I'm just curious just from a interest and box checking standpoint. But regardless, these edge guys should have success, need to have success.
Right. And Moon is a guy we talked about dating all the way back to the end of last season when the Steelers claimed him off waivers from the Ravens. So yeah, that will be a segment to watch. Willington Prevelion, a guy that you talked about, mentioned quite a bit, kind of cooled off, I think, last week or so here, but practice squad guy that I think can make some hay tonight.
Yeah, that's a guy that's athletic with active hands, a good pass rusher, and played DN, played D tackle. I want to see him against the run. I don't have maybe a great evaluation on some of the run defense. That could be hard to judge watching it live and kind of lose some of the names in the sea of bodies on a particular play. So run defense overall has been an issue, I think, for some of the backup defensive linemen for the front seven overall the last couple of practices when they were in pads before Thursday's walkthrough. So Prevelian, again, Logan Lee should play up and down the line. Jacob Slade should get some snaps. I mean, a guy like Lee, he might come close to leading the defense and leading the team in snaps played tonight. So that's a guy that needs to maximize this opportunity because that path to the 53 is still really hard to see. But the more you can do, the better. If injuries occur, you might play your way on.
All right. Inside linebacker, these kind of games set up for Mark Robinson to be a star in, right?
Sure, that's a guy that can run and hit and dump, and he's still displayed that in training camp. I think the coverage has been a bit better. I don't know if we'll be really calling many plays tonight. I'm not sure what the pairings will be at inside backer. There's some veterans there like Tyler Medikevich coming in, but hopefully a little more trust and better above the neck. But I think when you talk inside backer, Dave, it's two words: Peyton Wilson.
Yep, that without a doubt, he will be somebody that pay close attention to, and he ought to get a nice burn tonight too.
Yeah, that's a guy that played a ton of football. I mean, there's no reason to limit his snap count overall tonight. That's a guy that you want to see cover sideline to sideline. His C to do should be good. I want to see him get off blocks in the run game, maybe blitz a little bit, see him in coverage. His zone drops had a great, even in yesterday's real low tempo walkthrough, had a really nice athletic play to get zone drop and a hook curl responsibility and then tip away a Russell Wilson pass. So that's a guy that, I don't want to set the bar too high. He's had a good camp, not a great camp, but a good camp. But I want to see him on the field. He should look like one of the best athletes out there.
All right. Jacoby Windman, will he play outside and inside?
I think he will. He's been doing that the last week or so. Like I said, when lines have gotten thinner, and he's got a pass rush background, in college. And so that's a guy that I think will play both inside the backer and outside backer.
All right. As far as defensive backs go, all eyes will be on Beanie Bishop Jr. tonight. That will be a primary guy to focus on in the secondary. I don't know how much Dante Jackson or Joey Porter Jr. will actually play in this game. Go through the list here, man. Darius Rush, especially when it comes to special teams. Corey Trice Jr. will be first preseason action for a second-year player in Corey Trice Jr. So that will be another one to focus on here. And who has been the backup slot that's been coming on?
It's Thomas Graham Jr. and Grayland Arnold has made plays too. I want to see who's working second team slot. It might be Graham, could still be Arnold, but both guys have made plays. Graham to me has really ascended. Let me ask you, Dave, from Beanie in particular, we know he's going to work first team slot corner, get a bunch of burn. What do you want to see out of his play tonight in particular?
What he does against the run.
Me too. I don't have a great feel for that so far in terms of the NFL level. I'm sure he's willing and active and physical, but I want to get a better view of that. And I want to see him against some bigger slot receivers going against Calvin Austin, a similar body type. They've had really fun matchups, good back and forth, but I want to see him have to deal with a bigger body and how he kind of handles that, because the big slot is pretty popular in today's NFL.
Let's see. We're going to see some Cameron Sutton at safety tonight?
I think so. Probably not much at corner, and Sutton probably won't play until later in the game. I think the team realizes, A, he doesn't need a bunch of reps, and then, of course, B, the elephant in the room about his looming 8-game suspension. So knowing that Minka won't play, I mean, did bring back Jalen Elliott. We should have mentioned that too. Elliott, the transaction, coming back here with the safety lines getting thin. Nate Meters waived injured. They don't have a ton of safeties on the roster in general. So Sutton probably will play some second half action at safety.
Ryan Watts.
Big, debut for him. He's been physical. I think he's been vocal. I think he's had maybe a little quietly in terms of not being discussed much by the media, but I think he's had a good camp overall. A little too grabby in coverage. Want to see him avoid flags. That's a guy that you would also expect to play and play well on special teams.
All right. What else?
And just to mention, the outside corners to really dial them in. Yeah, Trice, I mean, kudos to him for working his way back. Long time coming for his first NFL game officially, albeit a preseason one. But those outside corner spots, to me, Dave, are still up for grabs behind Dante Jackson, behind Joey Porter Jr. You got Trice, you got Rush. Anthony Averett has come on strong. Pittsburgh could still consider external additions, waiver wire, when cutdowns occur. That's not out of the question right now. Will Pittsburgh, if they get to play dime, will Trice be used there? He should. He's shown an aptitude for that, and Pittsburgh has shown a willingness to play him there. So certainly have a lot of eyes on Trice, but Rush as well. He started off camp strong, been quieter lately. Gunner work could be important for him. Those gunner spots are up for grabs. Kalen Barnes, I think, had a kind of type of camp, not as fast as he timed at the combine. So that's a guy that could really use making some big plays tonight.
All right, let's switch over to special teams, and only one punter on the roster, and it's Cameron Johnston. So obviously looking for that consistency, hang time, and all. I think that's a captain obvious selection there. If you had to guess of who the first two sets of gunners and jammers will be, and I know they've been mix and matching. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's really, really hard to probably get a handle on what that will look like. And heck, you might see two out there in the first one and then switched up and all like that. But tell me about the top four in your mind.
Jammers is harder to guess. I'll say, and sometimes obviously you can have the double vice out there, but just in terms of naming two names, I'll say Rush and Trice as the initial jammers, at least being part of that group for the first punt return. As gunners for the first punt that Pittsburgh has, I'll say Rush and Des Fitzpatrick. Behind them, I'll say Trice and not entirely sure on the other one. Trice and maybe Ryan Watts, but I'd have to kind of check my notes on who's all been getting work there. So, and that matters because, I mean, you probably expect to punt a lot in this game, but you don't know for sure how often you'll punt today. And so you want to be the first guys out there because you don't want to be that third pairing going, offense, let's have a 3 and out. I want to get out there and run down this punt because I need it for my job. So you actually are, where you are in the pecking order is going to matter a lot for those gunners.
All right. All eyes obviously on a new kickoff rule, and specifically, hopefully we get a very nice, clean, clear, all 22 look. End zone look, so we can see the numbers of the big bodies versus defensive linemen, offensive linemen. Going to be interesting to track that just from a personnel standpoint and body size standpoint.
Yeah, well, they use different people that you wouldn't have used before, and I'm talking about defensive linemen, and you've seen that as they've, in camp, you don't run full live kick return units. You usually piece things together, and then you kind of have some simulated returns where you're not tackling, you're not going full speed, you're just kind of trying to work technique and certainly adjust to these new rules and procedures. But I would expect to see some defensive linemen covering kicks tonight. Maybe not on the initial unit, but second half in DeMarvin Leal, in Isaiah Loudermilk, in Logan Lee, potentially. Willington Prevlian could get use out there. You could see some blockers, some bigger people. Lee again, Fehoko, if he was playing, would have probably been used out there. So can those guys create extra versatility and just who can adjust to the new rules. I think Liao's a guy that could really look good here for being a big athletic guy that can hopefully defeat blocks in short spaces. So that'll be really fun to examine.
I wouldn't imagine Danny Smith's going to show much of anything as far as schematics go on that, where some of, because we had that post, what site was it on? Summer Sports, I think, talking about all the different kind of things that kind of schemes that teams try to do with some of these returns. I would just think that what we'll see tonight is more of, can these guys get off, especially on defending the kickoff, can these guys get off blocks and get downfield and make a play?
Has anyone in the preseason game so far done anything funky from what I've seen?
I haven't
pretty vanilla.
Down. Yeah. I just from I tried to watch a little bit last night of those two games to see, but I didn't go through it with a fine tooth comb. And haven't downloaded a 22 from either one of those. So I have an incomplete on that. I'll obviously be focusing on what the Steelers do tonight, but I think the general consensus is that we won't see special teams coordinators get too deep into this, especially the first couple of weeks, as far as schematics of trying to scheme things up.
Which is smart for the first week because you're just trying to get the fundamentals and basics down before you add anything else. I mean, you may get more stuff in weeks 2 and 3. There's only 3 preseason weeks overall, so not a lot of time to really wait to try something different. I know Mike Tomlin had told Bob Labriola today that for kickoffs, at least Pittsburgh's plan is just to kick it right down the fairway, was Tomlin's term. So just down the middle, allow returns to happen, and evaluate the guys from there, which I support.
I as well. What will our return lines look like tonight?
Going to see some John Rice Plumlee out there, some quarterbacks returning. Is he the first quarterback in Pittsburgh to return kicks or punts? Who would be did Cordell ever do that, even in preseason action early in his career? I'd have to check that. But you should see some John Rice Plumlee. I don't know if you'll see Warren do it. I think you could see it in the regular season. They'd probably be a little safer with him. Probably get some Jonathan Ward, maybe some Calvin Austin back there later in the game, maybe Scotty Miller, Dejon Edwards, probably see those guys out there in the landing zone. And of course, Cordell Patterson will have that role once he's healthy, but still on NFI.
All right. I'm not so worried about schematics, obviously, tonight, or really in the preseason in general. It'd be a lot of vanilla stuff. I'm looking for just guys making plays.
Being smart, being fundamentally sound, playing clean, and then making some plays. That's kind of where you're at the first time inside a stadium, especially for these new guys. Of course, if you're a veteran, then you have a higher bar and higher expectation of winning and success. One other just quick, very nerdy special teams note for me. Probably won't happen, but I just want to see it happen. Will Logan lead long snap at all? He's worked on that occasionally. Probably be Kuntz out there just to have clean looks overall. Don't want some sort of wacky play to occur where your only punter gets hurt or something like that. But Logan Lee has been working as a backup long snapper, and I personally would like to see him do maybe at least a field goal to Matthew Wright, say in the second half.
All right.
Give me, Dave, if you had to just rank him, give me a top 3 Steelers you want to most watch tonight. I know you want to watch everyone, just like myself, just like everyone listening first time in. But if you had to give me the 3 guys you're most intrigued to watch tonight, who are they?
I'll start with the first round pick, Troy Fautano. Really interested to see him in the black and gold tonight. Peyton Wilson, for sure, is going to be one of those guys I want to watch. Beanie Bishop Jr., definitely one of those guys I want to watch. So there's 3 just off the top of my head that really will be tuned in for.
All right, no, it's a great 3. I think I would have gone with. I'll say Peyton Wilson as well. To give just 2 other names, I'll go second round pick Zach Frazier. See him at center. I want to see him. If he's going to pull, and he had success doing that in training camp. I want to see him anchor against some bull rushes. And then I'll say for the third one, again, ton of names here. I'll say Corey Trice Jr. to see him in a stadium for the first time. Like I said, long time coming for him, just to see what that looks like. Will he get any sort of dime work, slot work? And just to kind of see how he moves. And because I don't have a great evaluation of his play in camp. He's not been targeted a ton or really like super competitive plays that he's been targeted at. So I just want to see him be able to turn and run and react and drive on the football and just see him move around some.
All right. I think you already threw out there that when the dust clears and the game book comes out from this one, that on the defensive side of the ball, especially if you add in special team snaps, you would think Logan Lee would probably log the most, right?
He'll be up there. I don't know if it'll be the most because they're going to maybe rotate defensive linemen more than they're going to rotate, say, a safety. But I think Lee will be up there overall and should be really versatile tonight. Like I said earlier, who else do you think can play a lot defensively? Wilson, I would expect to see a lot of snaps.
Mark Robinson could burn a lot tonight.
Yeah, I think you'll probably get, I mean, Wilson should start, right? Because Queen's not going to play. So I imagine it's going to be a Landon Roberts and Peyton Wilson to start defensively. And then Roberts will probably exit relatively quickly. And then Robinson, next man in, probably, right?
They need to give him as much burn as possible, I think, especially when you add in special team snaps on top of it.
Sure. And then
what about offensive side of football? Who's likely to be give me two guys that could log the most snaps offensively tonight?
I mean, I think the second team O-line across the board is going to see a lot of playing time in this one. So just Frazier, Fautanu is kind of where my head initially goes. Maybe Frazier even more so than Fautanu. I could see, maybe, Dylan Cook getting some extra work in there as well. Outside of the offensive lineman, which is kind of a cheat because, you're going to be out there a lot if you're no lineman. They're going to rotate a lot. I mean, maybe, Scotty Miller picks up a bunch of snaps and maybe a Des Fitzpatrick gets a lot of second half type of work. Running backs are going to rotate so much. So it's really hard to know who that guy is going to be. But some of the tight ends too. I mean, could Connor Hayward play a lot? Could Pruitt's probably going to play a bunch of snaps tonight.
Okay.
All right, Dave, any other final thoughts here for this game from the Houston side? That again, they're starting their starter. CJ Stroud will play, but they got over a dozen guys who will not play, including their tackles, Will Anderson. They got some corners that are out, so they're not, putting out a full roster tonight.
All right.
Any other final thoughts? I cut you off before answering my own question.
No. I think. I mean, as far as the first preseason game goes, I think we've hit it.
All right. Let's get to the Brandon Aiyuk portion of the show, and I'll pat myself on the back here for going 50-something minutes without talking about Brandon Aiyuk. Really, again, no major update. It seems to be a holding pattern, and I know things can change so quickly. Either it's a holding pattern until it's not. Reportedly, I think the consensus is, and there's so many conflicting pieces of information, is the Niners want a better offer from Pittsburgh. That is the major and at least the main holdup to this deal occurring.
Yeah, I have no idea. I would have bet you that this would have been settled by now, especially when this round started flaring up on Monday, and here we are Friday at this point. I don't know when it's going to get done, or when there will at least be some finality on it. I think the big thing that kind of the talking point, if you will, that crept up on Thursday is, could we see an NBA style three-way kind of draft here? A lot of people are talking now about might the Steelers send draft picks to the 49ers, and then the 49ers turn around and package those up to another team? I know Devontae Adams' name with the Raiders has come into this now through some speculatory reports, if you will, that maybe that might be a way that this thing goes, and look, you just don't see three-way trades very often at all.
Ever. Has that ever happened before in the NFL?
Wasn't it a couple years ago with, oh man, I'm drawing a blank on a wide receiver that was involved in this, but it seemed like there was some sort of three-way trade several years ago. Okay.
I mean, this is becoming more like basketball or something. Those three-way trades are more common. I mean, maybe you're right. I'm sure maybe it's happened once or twice, but we are so talking about jump the shark here for NFL talk and just mentioning these things. Maybe it happens. I'm not saying that it can't, but we're just through the looking glass of the craziness of how this trade is trying to go down.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember specifically who was that. Who was that team a couple years ago? I'm drawing a blank on it.
But the issue seems to be the Niners really want a receiver back. And had they done deals with Cleveland or New England, that would have been more plausible with Amari Cooper, Kendrick Bourne. Pittsburgh has really no receiver to give back. That's why they're trying to acquire a receiver, because they're lacking there. And so the Niners are trying to find some other creative way to still get a receiver and do this deal, knowing that Aiyuk really seems to be keen and honed in on going to Pittsburgh should he be moved.
Let's see here. Eagles netted former Bills second-round pick Ronald Darby, but also saw Sammy Watkins shipped to Los Angeles and Jordan Matthews sent to Buffalo. That was back in 2017.
Okay, it's probably not worth going through all the terms, but it was, so the Chargers, the Bills, the Chargers or the Rams? The Rams back then.
Let me see if
Sammy Watkins, Rams. You said Los Angeles, just clarifying on the team who that was.
The Buffalo Bills dialed up a pair of trades on Friday morning and comprehensively reorganized their wideout room, among others. The team announced that Sammy Watkins has been shipped to the Los Angeles Rams along with a 2018 sixth-round pick in exchange for cornerback E.J. Gaines and a 2018 second-rounder. In a corresponding swap, the Bills acquired Jordan Matthews and a 2018 third rounder from the Eagles for starting level cornerback Ronald Darby.
Okay. So remembering back then, Jordan Matthews was still viewed as a better prospect than what he ended up becoming. So, okay, there is some precedent, I suppose. Was a decent trade back then. Starter caliber players, third round pick, but still not on the magnitude of what Aiyuk situation is right now.
Right. And that, once again, that was 2017, I think, was the last kind of instance of something like this. So the general speculation reports seem to be that the Steelers aren't willing to come off any players to get this done. That it sounds like it would be draft picks only.
Yeah, Pittsburgh does not want to have to give away talent as they're pushing to try to compete, and the Niners want some talent back to not as deplete and hurt their roster as they give up a great player, a star player in Brandon Aiyuk. So that's the dance right now. Where this thing ends, I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows for sure and how this gets bridged, but we keep watching.
And I think some of the things to come out this week is that Aiyuk turned down $32 million, I think, is a report from the Patriots. Now, that getting thrown out there, that could mean a lot of things. Is that $32 million up to? What was the base value on this? What were the guarantees offered on this? We'll probably never know. So to loosely throw out that Brandon Aiyuk turned down $32 million supposedly from the Patriots is both informative and dangerous, I think, because you just don't, I believe that he turned down something from the Patriots. I believe that he just did not want to go to the Patriots. But as far as the specifics of maybe what he turned down, it's anybody's guess, and it'd be dangerous for me to even speculate on that when it comes to that. But if indeed that's the case, it sounds like, and this is dangerous once again, that he has no ambition of going to the Patriots or the Browns. So, and those seem to have been the teams that were in this thing along with the Steelers. We still haven't really, it doesn't sound like the Commanders have really ever been involved with this, but that doesn't mean that they haven't been. It sounds like it's where we've left off the other day. It's the Steelers in this thing, and whether or not they can sort of come to some sort of compensation package, even if it winds up being a three-way type situation here. With that, it sounds like the contract, at least on the Steelers' end, has been put to bed, and I have now speculated on that.
Yeah, I mean, when you say put to bed, so you think they're aligned, Aiyuk and Pittsburgh, and what a contract would look like? There has been some conflicting reporting on that, but it's really hard to make heads and tails of what Pittsburgh's offering, the structure, and if Aiyuk is agreeing to that. But it seems to be less of the issue than the compensation for San Francisco.
That is my dangerous interpretation of all this right now.
Okay. Do you have any? Has there been any hinting, any indication of what that agreement contractually is with Aiyuk?
All I can tell you is what I think is, and here's something else. It's very hard to find good sports radio interviews these days. I think that keep you tuned in for 20 minutes at a time. But there, KNBR in San Francisco had TJ Houshmandzadeh on, I think, yesterday evening, afternoon, night, whatever. And TJ Houshmandzadeh is Brandon Aiyuk's personal wide receiver coach. And while he didn't specifically come out and say that Brandon Aiyuk would accept X amount in average per yearly value, the number 28 million was discussed a few times during that interview. Make of that what you will, but I will say this from and there's other reports that the 49ers have gotten up as high as 26 million per year with Brandon Aiyuk. Now, there's been no really talk about what the guaranteed money in any of these deals offered would be. And that obviously could be a big point in this. But if you look at Brandon Aiyuk at his core and what his true and probably not out of realm over the top market value is, I believe it's 28 or 29 million per year.
Okay. And I assume even guessing structure is really impossible to do right now.
Well, when you're looking at the Steelers side, now this assumes that Omar doesn't get something funky done like getting the 49ers to pay X amount, of salary or whatnot. Assuming it's at its core, I would imagine this would be a 5-year total deal, including 2024. I would speculate that the average yearly value would be $28 to $29 million. I would speculate that the signing bonus or the first year money in 2024, including base salary and signing bonus, would be 30 to 31 million, maybe 32 million at max. I would imagine there would be good, strong cash flow in the first 2 years, at least, really 3 years in total, 24, 25, 26. And then the real unknown is the fully guaranteed money here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, 2024 would be fully guaranteed base salary, signing bonus. How much, if any, would the Steelers need to give Aiyuk in 2025 fully guaranteed to get this thing done? And if they did, that would obviously be a huge precedent to get passed from the Steelers, although they could frame this as, well, this is a unique outside trade situation when dealing with players down the line. You know what I'm saying? There. Look, they had to have full guarantees beyond year one to get top of the market deals done with both TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's easy to frame up and put over into a corner as well, they were top of the market guys that at their positions. That's why this was done with non-franchise quarterbacks over there. Will they need to have guaranteed money with Aiyuk past 2024 to get him done? And if so, that will be put in a box and put it in another corner over here to say, well, that was a trade situation there. But I think overall, the general framework of this thing is easy to outline overall here. I everything down to total value, to signing bonus, to potential 2024, really all the salary cap charges I think can easily be laid out too. I expect if this comes in at 28 to 29 million APY with him, I would expect the salary cap charge for 2024 to be somewhere between 8 to 10 million. And I would really expect the other 4 years to have salary cap charges ranging between $29 and $31 million.
With the contracts the other paid receivers this offseason have gotten, what have they been structured like in terms of fully guaranteed? Whether you talk about putting aside maybe Justin Jefferson, because that is top of the market that Aiyuk won't get, but A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, St. Brown, Tyreek Hill extension or reworking that he just got. What do those look like?
Well, I mean, you're running into second-year guarantees, and then you're talking into different variations of cash flow, total cash flow versus new cash flow, which are all important in deals. But those all vary. I would think.
Have they all gotten second-year guarantees? Have they gotten third-year guaranteed money?
I believe. I don't have it all broken down in front of me here, Alex, but I believe. Name a receiver here.
Jalen Waddle's contract, maybe it's going to be the most comparable thing to what Aiyuk is looking for if we're talking about that 28 number that Hushmanzada at least threw out there. Again, didn't concretely say this is the number. We know Aiyuk turned down up to at least 32 million from New England. Don't think he's looking for more, but 28 could be the number to hit or right around there.
All right, Jalen Waddle signed a 3-year, $84.75 million extension on May 30th. $76 million of the total contract value is guaranteed for injury, of which $36 million is fully guaranteed. And so he got 35.978 and some change fully guaranteed. I believe. Hold on a minute. I'll get you the full specifics of that.
Because obviously signing bonus, I assume first year base salary guaranteed. We'd have to do the math to, I guess, determine what second year would be guaranteed. I don't know how explicitly noted these contract layouts are if we have to kind of suss out what the second year guarantees are based on that information.
All right. Mike Florio said the signing bonus was $18.873 million for Waddle. His base salary for 2024 also fully guaranteed, but that was a minimum of $1.055 million. His 2025 base salary of $16.05 million was fully guaranteed. He had a $100,000 workout bonus in 2025. His 2026 base salary of $16.631 million was guaranteed for injury at signing and becomes fully guaranteed in March of 2025.
Okay, so some interesting ways to approach that. So second year fully guaranteed. So the bottom line is, from Aiyuk's standpoint, to have a comparable contract, he'd want at least the entire second year salary guaranteed.
More than likely, if he's smart, that's what they're angling for over there.
Right. I mean, you could say that he could agree and say, I'll do a roster bonus that becomes guaranteed, or even just the salary becomes guaranteed in March of 2025 for the 2025 season. That you could do that, of course,
right.
But if he wants to stick with how these other contracts have been laid out, which is typically what you're shooting for, not to be below them, but at or above, then you'd have to fully guarantee that, and hence the dilemma that Pittsburgh would be in.
Right. And that's going to be, and once again, once all this even started way back in March in that article that I wrote, and as I've stated ever since, every time this Aiyuk stuff flares up, to me, the actual trade, the actual act of acquiring Brandon Aiyuk, assuming it's not outrageous compensation, which I can't imagine the Steelers doing, would not be the story here. I
Mhm.
think what happens on the back end with the contract, specifically the APY, if it's higher than Watts, would be very noteworthy. And then any guaranteed money past year one would be, those two items. They won't in the national or the local media, but they'll be, as far as the stuff that you and I track historically, that would be a pretty monumental shift, I believe, with the Steelers.
And the issue is not, is Aiyuk worth that, but the door opens for doing that contract for every other player that gets a major long-term deal till the end of time, like that.
Even free agents moving forward, out, because look at Patrick Queen. I mean, they, a new record APY for an unrestricted free agent, but they only guaranteed the first year money with him.
Yeah, they kept precedent.
Right. So, but once again, the Steelers could frame this as a unique situation. I mean, you don't think the Steelers are going to come out of this and make Brandon Aiyuk the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, right?
No, of course not. Jefferson will remain in that top spot.
All right. So they would not be able to hide behind the positional
resetting the market.
Right. Resetting the market folder, if you will. So, now, would there be anything for them to preclude them saying, well, this was a trade situation, so now we're going
Good luck.
Frame it like this. That's once again why I think this would be why this aspect, assuming this gets done, would be worth a couple of posts on,
Sure. What if they're able to keep precedent and do a clause in the contract that it becomes guaranteed, March of 2025? That'd be really impressive. And if Aiyuk wants to come to Pittsburgh bad enough, and if Pittsburgh is the team willing to pay him what he wants, maybe Aiyuk says, all right, I'll dance with you.
Well, going back to what we said in this last podcast, what would be the huge triple crown? Not that this wouldn't be, people will take this and say, well, Dave says it wasn't a win for the Steelers. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about how could you frame this thing as a triple Lindy win? And I'm dating myself. You know what a triple Lindy is, right? You remember the old Rodney Dangerfield movie, I'm sure.
Of course.
Back to school.
One of my favorites.
Some people will get that reference. Some people won't. For this to be framed as a triple crown winning slam dunk win of the century, of the month, of the year, of the week, Aiyuk's APY would come in just under Watts at $28 million. No first round draft pick will be given up as part of this trade compensation. And then the third thing would be no guaranteed money past 2024.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal. And that's probably what Pittsburgh is angling for. It does not sound like there's an appetite to give up a first round pick. And the APY could be right around there. The structure could be the real tough one to achieve.
And look, the APY, if it comes in greater than Watts, I would like to think that they would go to guys like Watt and Minka and Cameron Hayward and say, look, this is what it's going to take to get the deal done. We just want to come to you guys as a cordial, to make sure. Not that I think there would be feathers ruffled, but I think it would just be the appropriate thing to do, to go to those guys and let them know.
Sure, and there's a courtesy in that, but I mentioned before, all you have to do is tell those guys, hey, do you want to win a playoff game? Do you want to make a Super Bowl run that you've never gotten to do before? Yeah, that's why we're doing this deal, and I think they'll understand that in spades.
And look, I mean, could we, a year from now, could we be talking about Watt resetting the market again?
Good chance of that happening.
Right. So, but I really think the framework, the outline, all the except for specific cash flow through the first 3 years, and without knowing the specific guarantees, I think it's easy to frame this contract up. And I did that in that post yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, no, I think that was good information. But the bottom line is right now, Dave, to kind of sum up the last 20 minutes of our conversation, is there's not really anything new as of this moment. Again, things can and could and eventually maybe will quickly change. But right now, the Niners are in a holding pattern. There is no immediate urgency to do a deal right now. If you're San Francisco, you're still August 9th, a month away from the regular season. So you can still wait things out and try to work the phones and figure out the best way. Kyle Shanahan was on a radio show yesterday, said he has no expectations for when this thing will get resolved. Did not completely close the door on Aiyuk staying either, but to do that, in terms of him signing an extension, it sounds like the Niners would have to increase their offer, which I'm not sure they're willing to do, and I'm not sure why they're not willing to do that.
It feels like things are so, especially to hear TJ Houshmandzadeh talk in that radio interview yesterday. It feels things haven't gone well over there. It feels like things are really fractured over there. Not saying that last minute 49ers can't match whatever his best offer is at this point. But it feels like that Aiyuk's ready to go somewhere else now.
I mean, it felt like that, but Houshmandzadeh was also indicating, and he's not speaking directly for Aiyuk, but obviously knows him well, working together this offseason, but said, like, if they're just willing to pay him what Aiyuk wants, he'll stay. Like, he still would like to stay. He doesn't want to have to go somewhere new, and all the risks of going somewhere new and not entirely sure how that new system and new team will ultimately treat you and how things will work out. So, I mean, he was literally like yelling at Jed York saying, Jed,
right,
get this deal done. So to me, that still indicates there's a desire to stay in San Francisco. It just will require the price tag that Aiyuk wants, which does not seem to be far above what the Niners were reportedly offering, which again, I go back to, I don't understand why the Niners just don't do the deal with Aiyuk, but that's for the 49ers Depot podcast people to think about more than us.
Right. I mean, I suppose it's not totally out of the question that they could still pony up and get him done, but the way this thing has been trending all week, it feels like he's going somewhere.
And if he's going to go somewhere, it sounds like it'll be Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's all I really have to say. Again, not a whole lot new to update. I think we're all in holding patterns. The Niners may be looking to work the phones to try to find a third team, because if they want a receiver back, it's not going to come from Pittsburgh.
Right. That's the sense that I get so far.
All right, Dave. Anything else here to talk about? Reminder, there is a game tonight for Pittsburgh to play against the Houston Texans. Anything else? If not, we can get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right. Let's start with let me see here. Jay writes in, Dave and Alex, I write this question before the Aiyuk deal is official, but rank these receiver duos from worst to best. Stallworth and Swan, Ward and Burris, Brown and Bryant, Pickens and Aiyuk. Oh Lord. I mean, you got just different eras well within there. Look, Stallworth and Swan, for the era that they were in, were damn good, right? The starting of the airing out of the football, specifically down the field. Swan a little bit smaller guy, Stallworth a little bit bigger guy. Both could get down the field. Swan making fantastic ballet-like catches. Ward, obviously more of a grittier player, not somebody, really a field stretcher more so than a possession guy that could work in all areas of the field. Plaxico Burris, obviously a guy that could get down the field, so you had a little bit of a yin and a yang there. Antonio Brown and Martavius Bryant, man, Brown do it all, anything that you needed. Martavius Bryant, obviously a guy that could stretch the field vertically. I mean, those two in a limited amount of time were hard to top. And then Pickens and Aiyuk. I mean, Pickens still very much coming into his own. Definitely is shown that he can make nearly any kind of catch in the NFL. And Aiyuk, more of a guy that can work all areas of the field. I mean, it's hard. I mean, Antonio Brown, just kind of what he did on the field, just kind of him paired with whoever kind of trumps it all right now, though.
I'll still put the two Golden Jackets in the top spot there, Swan and Stallworth. The eras, like you said, can make things difficult to compare one to one. The numbers don't compare to AB, but it was a different world, especially with Pittsburgh being so run heavy. Those first two Super Bowls, but two Hall of Famers trump, I think, everything else in that respect. I'll go AB, Bryant second. Less so on Bryant. The physical talent was off the charts, but AB's carrying the weight, doing the heavy lifting of that one. Ward Burris third, solid. Didn't get to play together for super long. That'll ding them a little bit. And non Hall of Fame player there. AB is talent wise is deserving of the Hall of Fame. Will he get in? Discuss that some other time. And then I'll just put Pickens, Aiyuk last because it doesn't exist yet, and both still have a lot to prove.
All right, fair enough. Lenny Barsikowski writes in, guys, I'm just talking a hypothetical here, but looking back at last year, don't you think the Steelers should have tried Nate Herbig at center? He says Mason Cole couldn't even snap the ball to the quarterback. It was very frustrating. I think the organization knew he was not returning this year. Did they just go into the draft with that need so glaring without trying somebody on the roster? I'm not at all saying they shouldn't have drafted Frazier. However, they really had a lot of good options at wide receiver in that second round that could have filled some of those holes. Love you guys. You're the best. Look, here's the thing about Herbig last year. You would have been kind of going in mostly sight unseen, even though he had played some center in the NFL leading up to last year. It wasn't much, and unfortunately, due to ailments, you didn't get to see him do that much of any during last year's preseason either. I guess the root of it is when Mason Cole was going through it last year, should they have just sat him and thrown Nate Herbig in there?
It's a fair question, and it's fair to wonder, should they have made a change? I think like you said, the lack of experience that center Herbig had, and do you want to make center changes on top of quarterback changes, introduce even more new and changing elements to the two guys literally touch the ball every single play? That's my guess of why they didn't do it. Is that a good enough reason given Cole's struggles? I don't know. They did like Cole for being a smart guy, and I think helping out some line calls and trying to do that aspect, the intangible aspect. But yeah, it's fair to critique that. I don't have any qualms about them drafting Frazier and, still probably be the starter at some point in his Steelers career. And, Herbig's just having a good camp, and that's where things are at. But I get the long-term view they took in taking Zach Frazier.
I think just looking at this at its core, what was the likelihood of Nate Herbig becoming your next 2-3 year center?
Yeah, not super great. So we all understood this team needed a center in the offseason. And, listen, they could re-sign Herbig next year and have him compete at guard if James Daniels goes, which he almost certainly will, and have him compete Herbig with, McCormick or Anderson or whoever. So, there's value in what Herbig could still do, even if he's not the starting center at some point later this season.
Mario Brownell writes in, fellows, from now on, any torturous and ongoing ordeal will now be known as getting Aiyuked. For example, he says, Dave's wife Aiyuked him for taking too long recording the podcast. Seriously, though, it seems to me that this trade hasn't gone down due to one fundamental flaw. San Francisco wants to trade us a number one wide receiver, but we already have one, so we'll never pony up what they want because we already have a guy in that spot. Your thoughts? So he's trying to say San Francisco wants to trade us a number one, but we already have one, so we will never pony up what they want because we already have a guy in that spot. Your thoughts? My thoughts are this team needs two wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, again, the issue is really about what receiver can the Niners get back, and that does seem to be a sticking point. But are the Niners really gonna? I don't know. I mean, can they hold on to that forever and say we have to get back a receiver at some point? Are they going to relent and say, let's get back? Couldn't they? This kind of goes into the 3-team thing, but couldn't they just get back draft picks and then go trade for a receiver right after? Just go take that 4th round pick that Pittsburgh sends them to go get, I don't know, whoever, Alec Pierce or something like that.
I mean, yeah, and I think that's why this has become a talking point these last 2 days is will that end up being maybe that's what's taking so long to get this thing ironed out.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a sticking point based on all the reporting is the Niners trying to find that receiver. And again, Pittsburgh's not trading Pickens, and they simply have no one else. I think, was it Colin Coward, which is such a terrible way to start a sentence, but was it Colin Coward that said like trade Roman Wilson to San Francisco? Somebody suggested it. Maybe it was Tannenbaum. I don't know. But would you do that? It's a crazy thing to say. A guy you just drafted. You wouldn't do that?
Nah.
If it was a second round pick and Roman Wilson, would you trade him for Aiyuk?
I mean, I'm trying to look at this as cutting room floor. I mean, we're talking about something that's not going to happen.
Sure. Well, I guess the question is why couldn't it happen? I mean, we're just in crazy talk right now, but it's at the end of the show. If you
I don't mind hypotheticals, but I mean, we're talking about. I mean, I guess if that's what it took to get the deal done, okay, but I don't know. I mean, for what you don't even know, you've already got a rookie over there anyway, and Pearsall. Are you really wanting to? And actually,
they're pretty similar guys, Pearsall and Wilson.
Right. I mean, why would you? And you don't know enough about either one of them at this point because they've missed so much practice time. Why would you want to go down that route? You know,
because it's a receiver and it's Pittsburgh not trading Pickens, but Calvin Austin is not going to offer value. Scotty Miller is not going to offer the value that the Niners would want. And you get a young guy like Wilson. Again, it's crazy. And I was thinking the other day, how many draft picks have been traded before their rookie season began? There is one I can think of top of my head. Lynn Bowden was traded of the Raiders, 4th round pick. And he got dealt his rookie year before ever actually appearing in a regular season game. He had a bad camp, I think it was, and the Raiders were kind of a disaster. But that is one example that's actually pretty recent.
Okay. Let's see. Let's go to Garrett Humbertson, right? Saying prolonging the drama. In regards to the Aiyuk drama, in all your years of watching the NFL, can either of you remember such a drawn-out drama of will they, won't they, will he, won't he, trade, signing, anything? This has been going on since at least March, he writes. On a more serious note, do you think the 49ers are stubbornly determined not to get fleeced by Omar Khan, even though the Steelers essentially hold all the cards? He says, my read is that Khan knows Aiyuk only wants to go to Pittsburgh and will veto pretty much any other side, and so there's no reason for the Steelers to give up a lot of assets. At its core, could it? The first answer, the first one, yeah, this has been exhausting, Garrett, and I mean, all the different. You ought to see the stuff we haven't written about,
mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
When it comes to this, and I mean, for a couple of days, it was like every 15 minutes. And here we are, Monday through Friday. I can't remember being this exhausted, Steelers related, when it comes to the will they, won't they, will he, won't they type situation. And I've done this since 2008.
It wasn't as prolonged, but the field stuff, we kind of forget that was a long discussion for 2 months or so of will they, won't they, and then didn't feel like they would after trading for or signing Wilson, and then they trade Pickett and get Fields. So kind of already went through this with Fields, didn't we?
It doesn't feel like to this degree.
Not to this degree. It's not been as long.
Maybe I have recency bias, you know.
But I mean, that was the talk of the offseason for a solid while there. Anyway.
What about the second part of this? Determined not to get fleeced by Omar Khan. I mean, I will say this. If this thing goes down like, and if the 49ers don't come out of this in part of like a 3-way trade by getting another wide receiver, and if they only get if they don't get a first rounder out of this, and definitely no players from the Steelers out of this, boy, that San Francisco talk radio is going to be brutal when it comes to John Lynch, because it feels like they have butchered this thing dating all the way back to March.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, I think they Because trading Aiyuk really for anything in return is already a bad look for the organization because you made your roster worse right before the season begins without a great way to make it better before the year begins for a Super Bowl contending team. And so if you're just trading him for even like 2 first-round picks, is still hurting you now and still going to create that flack now. And you're disappointed by that. And if you trade him for 75 cents on the dollar, then you've now traded away an asset, made your team worse, not gotten a great haul in return for that. So you really don't want to look bad on that double whammy of making your team worse and not getting great value in an effort to make your team worse. So it's a stubbornness thing, sure, but it's also just like trying to save face and not completely, get screwed in this thing.
And we can only judge the deal once the deal gets done. So, stay tuned for more of this drama. Nicholas Gooden writes in, happy first game day of 2024. Here's an unpopular opinion for you. I do not want the Steelers to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. Here's my laundry list of why. He says, I think there's a good chance that it will negatively affect George Pickens mentally. He says, I'm sure he's looking forward to being a true wide receiver this year and balling out to earn his payday in the next offseason. He says, I don't think the Steelers can pay both, and I think George is the better player, he says. Number 2, as Dave has emphasized, paying Aiyuk $30 million a year and second highest on a team would be a huge statement by the Steelers, in my opinion. The Steelers locker room seems pretty tight knit at this point, and I'd hate to see that hurt it. Until I see number 3, until I see the Steelers show that they might have a potent enough offense to support multiple elite playmakers, I don't think I can believe that it's possible. The days of the killer bees seems like an old myth at this point to him. Number 4, I think the Steelers' ability to draft wide receivers allow them to play the fungibility card to some extent. Have at it, Alex.
A lot there. I reject the premise. I think if they wanted to, I'm not saying they would, but I think they would want that. They're capable of paying both Aiyuk and Pickens. Look at Waddle and Hill. Look at A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. And those quarterbacks, by the way, are not on rookie deals anymore. Tua just got paid, and Jalen Hurts is a top paid quarterback. So the money's there. The cap's going to continue to rise. So just off the top for that, to me, you can certainly pay Aiyuk this year, Pickens next year.
At its core, there is always a way to get it done if you want to get it done. And that's funny that TJ Husmanzada made that part of his rallying point during that interview last night. You can always figure out a way. And look, even if they trade for Aiyuk, sign him to a new deal, I can tell you exactly what's likely to happen. They're going to turn around in 2025 and restructure his deal. Would you agree? Would you be surprised if they didn't do that?
I mean, you have a better handle on the future things than I do, but that seems a reasonable thing to do considering they've done that many times before with Highsmith this year, other players in the past. So it would seem likely to occur.
From a cash standpoint, at least where they sit right now, there is no problem in giving Aiyuk a big deal this year, Pickens a monster deal next year, and that even assumes that they going to have, may or may not do something with TJ Watt next off season. All of it can be done from a cap and a cash standpoint. People are saying, well, this automatically rules out a franchise quarterback. Look, a first year, looking specifically, if you were to do a deal with Pickens next offseason, his first year cap hits would be manageable and all like that. All right. Mm-hmm. If you went out for whatever quarterback, even if it's your own, let's say one of Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, or if you went outside and had to do a mega deal, the first year cap hit on would be manageable to some degree. Now it could vary depending on what the deal is. Theoretically, at least where this team sits now, you could still do all of that. Once again, it goes back to how bad do you want to get it done. Then the discussion moves into, will they do something with with Pickens next off season, and that will be one of the bigger topics moving forward, assuming they get Aiyuk done and signed to a mega deal. Is what does this mean for George Pickens next offseason?
And I've been sounding that alarm for a while now, for months, about the storyline this year's about Aiyuk and all that. The storyline next year is going to be about Pickens and whether or not he gets paid and his feelings towards that.
And I think Pickens holds the key to that answer with how he does and how he acts and everything along those lines. Will play a big part in it.
Yeah, of course, this year he's going to have a really solid year to maximize that value next year. For the other questions, he was asking about the locker room chemistry and worried about Aiyuk coming in. Was that the point of one of his questions?
Yeah, he's just worried about the locker room with, especially if Aiyuk comes in and is made the new highest paid player on the team.
I'm personally not worried about that. I think Pittsburgh has a pretty strong locker room. I think they've been able to kind of reset the culture some this year. They've gotten tougher coaching, which is important with Azani, Arthur Smith, et cetera. So it's hard to quantify and hard to really, say definitively yes or no, but I'm not worried about that.
I'm not worried about that either. The leaders, they have good enough leaders in that locker room here. Now, I'll tell you what, if they don't, there'll be a couple of guys looking side eye over there like Najee Harris or whatnot, but
well, he ain't getting paid. I don't think either way they trade for Aiyuk or not. So
okay.
I mean, I know you still think there's a chance, and maybe I said that a little too strongly, but I don't see it happening, and I don't think really Aiyuk getting paid or not is impacting whether or not Harris gets paid or not.
Right. I don't think it'll impact it. It's just whether or not they want to do it or not.
Right. And then the last part about wouldn't make the move until the offense proves it's more potent. It's kind of working backwards. Like add potency to make your offense more potent, as opposed to just kind of hoping to sit there and it just exists out of nowhere. Do things to make your team better rather than just hoping it is kind of self-created. Look,
do you want to have a chance to win this year?
I do.
And if you want a chance at getting, not only making the playoffs, not only winning a playoff game, but maybe trying to make some sort of run at this, you need another wide receiver in that room.
You do. Your offense has been too stagnant for too long. You've made strides there to get better identity, better offensive line, better quarterback play, but you're still missing that receiver to take you over the hump when you're in the playoffs and you're facing Kansas City or Buffalo or whoever, and you got to put up 30 points, and putting up 14 points is not going to get the job done against those teams.
All right, Andreas writes in 2 questions. Do all other teams do the same type of activities in camp? 7 shots, backs on backers, etc. Number 2, what do special team players do for the majority of training camp and practice if they're not kicking, punting, or snapping? Feels like it's a lot of empty, wasted time.
Yeah, in terms of how, I've never sat through another training camp practice for another team, but I think Pittsburgh's is pretty unique. They're one of the few, if not the only team that tackles, that does actual live sessions. Most teams will go just stud tackling, wrap up. You don't go to the ground. Pittsburgh is, not every session, but there's a ton of live tackling sessions. I don't know if other teams do backs on backers. Probably some don't. I don't think the other teams do 7 shots. I think Pittsburgh's fairly unique in that regard. So, yeah, I think Pittsburgh's camp structure is pretty unique.
All right. What do you specialists do?
Not much. It's a lot of hanging out and palling around. And if it's not a special teams period that they're involved in, then they're just kind of on the far field chilling. It's a pretty good life to be a specialist and a kicker, punter, snapper during training camp.
All right. Bryce writes in, question is about NFL trades. Why do you think we don't see more teams agreeing to pick swaps in the draft like they do in the NBA?
It's a good question. I don't know. What do you think, Dave? That's a good question.
I got no, I could, I don't know. I don't know completely what the NBA does. Can you you pay more attention to that?
That's about pick swaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what he's referring to is, well, I'm not entirely sure. There's like literal pick swaps, but there's also like lottery protected. It'll be, you can get, trade you the first round pick next year. It's top 5 lottery protected. So there's that system of it that may complicate things. The NBA draft having a lottery, whereas the NFL is a strict, just standings based order. I think honestly, and I'm just totally speculating, I think it's just kind of partially precedent. Like once the NBA started doing that, it just became the norm, and that's what teams did. In the NFL, it's not as much the norm. Draft picks and trades aren't as active, aren't as frequent, and so it just becomes, if the NFL starts doing it more, then more owners will accept it as common practice, and it just kind of becomes a snowball that rolls down a hill. I think that might be one element of it. There's probably some cap implications. It's larger rosters. I don't know. There's other things, the NBA having a soft cap with luxury tax and all those rings they have, with the NFL having a hard cap. There's probably a whole discussion about those types of things.
All right. He says, let's say the Steelers don't want to give up any first-round picks for Aiyuk. Why not propose the following? Agree to a 2025 and 2025 pick swap. If the Steelers are worse than the 49ers, then the 49ers could swap picks. If the Steelers finish better than the 49ers, then the 49ers automatically get the Steelers' second-round pick in both years. What would stop this trade, and why don't you see more pick swaps? I mean, I guess it would become more in the conditional classification, and I don't know specifically what the rules are as far as conditionals go. I mean, you got some things, like the whole Justin Fields thing. If he plays 51% of the snaps,
it becomes the 4th round.
Yeah, becomes a higher pick. So I would suppose something like that would become more conditional labeled. And I don't know if I'm trying to think if I've seen any, and hadn't there been some, if teams make the playoffs, then there'd be, it's just so dirty and so hard to research, Bryce. I mean, I guess at its core, something like that would become in the conditional category. And the reason you probably, if it's allowed, why you haven't seen it, is because it's not, very favored.
Yeah, I think it's like the voidable contracts. They weren't in vogue until teams started using them because they had to use them, and now they're pretty commonplace across the NFL. I know they were used before COVID with the Saints, the Eagles. I think had used them, but it's just kind of one of those things that the NFL is a little stubborn, a little old school. And also maybe if you're doing conditional picks, then you're unclear. Okay, how do we map out our future? We don't know exactly what picks we're getting. If you're a team that has, we have this pick on the books traded for them, but if we don't do this, we can't trade away now that conditional pick. The NFL built through the draft more than the NBA built through the draft. Like the NBA, it's the lottery, like your main picks. Everything else is kind of afterthoughts. The NFL draft is much more how you build up teams. NBA is more about free agency and kind of getting a couple of superstar players. So there's probably a lot of layers to that, but I think the complication of projecting out, what capital you have, what you can give up, and, what you're working with makes things difficult to wade through for GMs.
All right. We got through a lot of emails today. They've been building up. So anything else you'd like to add? We're coming up on 2 hours here. Want to make sure we give people time to get through this before the game starts.
Yeah. Enjoy the game tonight. Dave and I will be back. When will we be back? There's no practice tomorrow. I guess Sunday. I don't know how we're doing this in terms of recapping. We'll have our normal episode Monday, but be back here sometime soon, at least by Sunday, to talk about training camp and obviously talk about this game.
Absolutely. And at worst, a full edition of the Terrible Podcast on Monday. We'll see how the time goes in between there. And if anything significant obviously happens, we would jump on and probably do a short pod or something like that, but we'll have to play it by ear. All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button in the navigational bar and follow the directions that way. So until the next show, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.